A revelation born of tears, an introduction to a sacred mystery. What I am about to share with you did not come from a theological study or a carefully constructed sermon. It was born from a moment of profound and raw intimacy, a revelation given to me by Jesus this very morning that was so tender, so overwhelmingly beautiful, it brought me to my knees in tears before my mind could even begin to process its full meaning. It is a truth that touches upon one of the deepest longings of the human heart, the mystery of soulmates, and what truly, astonishingly happens when they are finally reunited in heaven. This is not intended to be a simple, comforting story of an afterlife reunion. It is, instead, a sacred glimpse into a divine encounter that transcends all earthly comprehension, a moment so saturated with pure emotion and spiritual truth that it has the power to break open the heart and invite us to feel, perhaps for the first time, the true depth and passion of God's love. It is a revelation that redefines our understanding of love, loss, and the eternal promise that binds souls together. I invite you now, not as a passive audience, but as a fellow traveler on this journey of faith and love, to open your heart and your mind. I want to share this intimate encounter with you, to pull back the veil just a little on the sacred mystery of what awaits those who are joined by a love that this life could not contain. Please listen with patience and tenderness. Listen not just with your ears, which hear words, but with your spirit, which recognizes truth. Because what you are about to hear touches the very core of what it means to love and to be loved now and forever. This morning, as I sat in the quiet stillness of my room, I was deep in prayer. My heart was heavy, seeking not just God's presence, but an understanding of the profound pain and persistent longing that so many people carry within them. I was thinking of you, of all the souls who navigate this world with a piece of their own heart missing. In that moment of seeking, I was gently, lovingly drawn into a vision. It was as if Jesus himself was sitting with me, choosing to reveal a secret one that has been held in the depths of eternity but is now meant to be a balm of comfort and a beacon of hope for all who have known the sharp ache of separation from their beloved. The spiritual weight of this revelation was immense, yet it was cradled in a sweetness so pure that it moved me beyond the capacity of words. You see, here on earth, the story of soulmates is often a story of separation. The sharp, bitter sting of it is a universal language. Whether it is through the miles of physical distance, the walls of misunderstanding, or the finality of death, the divine bond that connects two souls is relentlessly tested by hardship, by longing, by the very fabric of our fallen world. Throughout my life, I have been a witness to countless stories of love interrupted. I have seen couples torn apart by circumstances beyond their control, families fractured by the devastation of loss, and friendships severed by the unyielding finality of death. And I confess, I have felt the ache of those separations reverberate deeply within my own soul. It is a pain that defies logic, a silent scream in the heart that forms a question that haunts us all. What happens to a love so profound when we are torn apart? Does it simply fade into memory? Does it endure the ravages of time and death? And if it does endure, what does that reunion, that final fulfillment truly look like? This morning's revelation did not just answer those questions. It shattered them with a truth more beautiful than I could have ever conceived. Jesus showed me that the reunion of soulmates in heaven is not the quiet, gentle, ethereal meeting we might imagine. It is not a polite handshake or a soft, knowing smile across a celestial room. It is something far greater, far more overwhelming. It is an encounter that shakes the very foundations of the soul with the explosive power of divine love, finally made perfect and whole. It is an experience so intensely pure, so emotionally cataclysmic, that it moves beyond the constraints of earthly emotion into something utterly sacred and profoundly holy. The moment Jesus unveiled this truth, I was overcome with an overwhelming sense of awe and a tenderness that broke my heart in the most beautiful way. I understood in that instant that this is not merely a reunion of two people who once loved each other on earth. It is a divine culmination, a reunion of two souls who have been held fast in the grip of God's eternal promise. It is a meeting where every tear shed in loneliness, every pang of longing felt in separation, every silent prayer whispered into the darkness of night is finally, gloriously met, answered, and transformed by a tidal wave of divine love. Jesus invited me to imagine, if I could, the sheer depth of such a reunion. He explained that when soulmates meet again in heaven, the recognition is immediate, piercing, and utterly overwhelming. It is not a recognition of a familiar face or a collection of shared memories. It is a recognition of the soul itself, the very essence of who they are, a recognition of the other half of a song God began writing before the beginning of time. And this recognition, he said, brings forth an outpouring of emotion so powerful, so pure, that it cannot possibly be contained. I will be honest with you. I struggled to grasp what this meant at first. My earthly mind immediately went to categories I knew. Was this outpouring sorrow? Was it the release of pent-up grief? No. Jesus gently corrected my limited understanding. He explained that it is a sobbing, not a sobbing born from pain or sadness, but from the sheer, uncontainable joy and absolute healing that floods the soul in that moment. It is a sobbing that erupts from the release of every single burden ever carried on earth. Every moment of loneliness is finally and completely washed away by the perfect, unconditional love that only God can give. It is the sobbing of hearts reunited, of souls restored, of a love story reaching its perfect, divine conclusion. This sobbing is not a sign of weakness. It is a sacred expression of the depths of divine joy. It is the sound of heaven's embrace, where every tear shed in separation is now matched and redeemed by tears of overwhelming gladness. Jesus described it as a holy torrent, a flood of tears that cleanse and heal, that break down every remaining wall and open the heart to the fullness of an eternal, unbreakable connection. As I listened to his words, the contrast between our earthly experience of love's pain and the heavenly reality of its fulfillment struck me with incredible force. On earth, our love is so often marked by imperfection, by longing, by the dull, constant ache of absence. But in heaven, that same love is perfected, purified, and unshackled from the limitations of time, space, and human frailty. The reunion of soulmates is not a quiet moment of recognition. It is a profound, thunderous flood of healing grace that touches every fiber of their eternal being. This revelation shifted something deep within me. I realized that so many of us carry the heavy weight of separation, whether through loss, distance, or brokenness, and we long for a reunion that will make all the pain worthwhile. Jesus showed me that this reunion is not only real, but it is a moment so full of love that it completely transforms and gives meaning to everything that came before it. It is the moment when all the tears, all the waiting, and all the longing find their ultimate purpose and their glorious end. I want you to try and imagine this with me. Picture two souls, separated for what felt like an eternity. Suddenly, they are swept into each other's arms, and they are overwhelmed. Not by nostalgia, not by sadness for the lost time, but by a joy so deep, so absolute, it brings forth tears that flow freely, uncontrollably, as a holy and final release. These tears are the language of heaven, speaking a truth that surpasses all words, that love never loses, never fades, never dies. It only waits, patiently and faithfully, for the perfect moment to be made whole. This morning's encounter was a profound gift, but it also felt like a sacred responsibility. I know that many of you listening have experienced the searing pain of separation, the deep ache of lost love, and the gnawing uncertainty of what lies beyond this life. I want you to know, with every fiber of my being, that there is hope. A hope rooted not in mere sentiment or wishful thinking, but in the very heart of Jesus himself. He is the one who holds every soulmate, every love story, in his nail-scarred hands. And he promises that when the time comes, the reunion will be unlike anything we have ever dared to imagine. As I share this with you now, I feel the weight of that promise settling gently upon my own soul. It is a promise that can carry us through the darkest nights, the loneliest moments, and the deepest grief. It is a promise that says, in a divine whisper to your aching heart, your love is not lost, it is waiting. And when the moment arrives, it will flood your soul with a joy so great, it will bring tears of healing and celebration. So, please, as you hear these words, allow yourself to feel the depth of this truth. Let it soften your heart, open your spirit, and prepare you for the revelation that is yet to come. The story of soulmates reunited in heaven is not just a story. It is a sacred truth that reveals the very heart of God's everlasting, passionate love for each and every one of us. I will continue to share more of what Jesus revealed to me, but for now, hold on to this one powerful image. The reunion of soulmates in heaven is a moment of overwhelming, uncontrollable sobbing, not from sorrow, but from the pure, perfect, unadulterated joy of love restored. This is the promise of eternity. This is the gift of God's grace. And this is the hope that sustains us all. The great contrast, love on earth versus love in heaven. What I'm about to share now deepens the revelation I received this morning, for as I continued to reflect on this vision, Jesus helped me to see the stark, essential contrast between our earthly experience of love and the heavenly fulfillment that awaits. This contrast is not only striking, it is absolutely essential to understanding the profound nature of these reunions. Grasping it can reshape how we view love, separation, and the very hope we cling to in this life. Here on earth, the journey of soulmates is often a path marked by struggle, separation, and a deep, persistent longing. This is a reality that many of us know all too well, a truth etched into the landscape of our hearts. I have watched families torn apart by the harsh realities of distance, couples separated by insurmountable circumstances, and dear friends broken by a misunderstanding or the finality of death. These separations inflict a unique kind of pain, a confusion, and sometimes a creeping sense of hopelessness that can cloud the brightest of spirits. Love, which God intended to be our greatest source of joy, often becomes tangled in the thorny imperfections of human existence. Miscommunication, unmet expectations, betrayals, and the relentless, unforgiving passage of time. Think for a moment about the lived earthly experience of soulmates. They may be living thousands of miles apart, their hearts aching with the constant, dull throb of wanting to be together, yet facing practical, financial, or political barriers they simply cannot overcome. Sometimes, a soulmate relationship is tragically interrupted by a sudden illness, a senseless accident, or the slow decline of age, leaving behind a devastating trail of grief and 1,000 unanswered questions. The yearning that remains in the wake of such loss can feel unbearable, like a hollow space in your chest where joy once lived and breathed. And yet, even in the midst of all this pain, there is a persistent, often inexplicable hope, a whispered promise that love is not truly lost, but is only waiting. Jesus helped me to understand that this earthly experience is intentionally incomplete. It is not a cosmic mistake or a cruel twist of fate, but a crucial part of a greater, divine tapestry that we can only see in fragments from our vantage point. The struggles, the separations, the unfulfilled longings, they all serve a sacred purpose. They are designed to prepare the soul, to till the soil of the heart, for a reunion that is far beyond anything the human mind can conjure or the human heart can fully imagine on its own. The very imperfection of earthly love sets the stage for the absolute perfection of heavenly love, a reality where all barriers fall away, all tears are redeemed, and what remains is pure, unfiltered, explosive joy. In heaven, Jesus showed me, the reunion of soulmates is nothing like the broken, aching, fragmented experience we know on earth. In that sacred space, love is not hindered by distance, distorted by misunderstanding, or diminished by time. It is not shadowed by the fear of loss or the memory of pain. Instead, it is a radiant, overwhelming, all-encompassing presence that fills every corner of the soul with divine light and eternal life. The reunion is the moment when all the earthly struggles are not just healed or forgotten, but are miraculously transformed into the very fabric of a celebration of divine connection. Imagine the difference, the sheer scale of this contrast. On earth, love can often feel like a quiet hope, a fragile thread stretched thin by the immense pressures of hardship. In heaven, that same love becomes a mighty, rushing river, overflowing its banks with the fullness of God's grace. It is a love that cannot be contained, a love that bursts forth in unrestrained joy and instantaneous healing. This is the union that Jesus revealed to me, the pure, perfect, and powerful meeting of souls who have longed for each other across the seemingly insurmountable divides of time and space. Understanding this contrast between earthly love and heavenly reunion is crucial because it helps us to make sense of the pain we are asked to endure here. The deep longing we feel is not a sign that something has gone wrong. Rather, it is a sacred preparation for what is to come. The ache of separation is like a shadow that exists only to highlight the brilliance of the light of reunion. Without the struggle, without the absence, we might never be able to fully grasp the profound depth of the joy that awaits us. Jesus also showed me that this heavenly reunion is not simply a return to what was, but a glorious transformation into something infinitely greater. On earth, as soulmates, we may have been flawed, imperfect, limited by our human frailties and sins. In heaven, we are made whole. Our love is purified, elevated, and magnified to perfectly reflect the very heart of God. The reunion is a complete restoration of the original divine design, two souls, perfectly and eternally united, no longer separated by the brokenness of the world. As I pondered this, I realized how this truth can bring immediate comfort to those who are suffering the pain of separation right now, in this very moment. To know that the reunion will be so much more than a mere meeting, that it will be an overwhelming flood of joy and healing, can give us the strength to endure the lonely moments, the unanswered questions, and the tears we shed in silence. It provides us with a new framework for holding our grief, not as a final, crushing loss, but as a temporary and meaningful part of a much larger, beautiful story. This understanding also reshapes how we view the relationships we have now. Instead of seeing a potential separation as the end of the story, we can begin to see it as a pause, a sacred intermission in preparation for a greater reality. It encourages us to cherish the connections we have with a new intensity, knowing that they are a foretaste of an eternal bond that even death cannot sever. And it challenges us to live with a hopeful anticipation, trusting that the love we hold so dearly on earth will one day be made gloriously complete in heaven. Jesus invited me to share this, because so many people feel utterly alone in their suffering, weighed down by the crushing silence of unanswered prayers and the relentless ache of lost love. He wants us to know that the reunion is coming, and that it will be more glorious, more joyful, and more healing than anything we can possibly imagine. It is a promise that transforms mourning into hope, loneliness into anticipation, and loss into the joyful expectation of a divine restoration. As I continue to wrestle with these profound truths, I see that they carry powerful implications for how we live and love today. They call us to hold on to faith, even when love seems distant or broken. They urge us to trust in God's perfect timing and His master plan. They remind us that every moment of longing is a sacred thread being woven into the grand tapestry of eternity, connecting us to the promise of reunion and joy beyond measure. So, as you hear this, I invite you to hold fast to this contrast between earthly pain and heavenly joy. Let it be a constant reminder that the struggles of love in this life are not the final word. There is a reunion waiting for you, a moment when every tear, every sigh, every moment of waiting will be met with a joy so overwhelming that it changes everything. The love you know now, as fragile and incomplete as it may sometimes seem, is but a shadow of the perfect, radiant love that awaits. And when that moment of reunion finally comes, it will not only heal the deep wounds of separation, but it will flood your soul with a joy so deep, so pure, that it will bring forth an uncontrollable sobbing, not from sadness, but from the sheer, unbounded delight of love finally restored. This is the promise Jesus gave me to share with you today, a promise that turns the agony of earthly separation into the hopeful anticipation of a heavenly meeting, far beyond what our hearts have ever dared to imagine. It is a promise that invites us to live not in despair, but in the radiant hope of a love perfected and made eternal. I will continue to share more of this revelation. But for now, hold this truth close to your heart. The contrast between the brokenness we endure here and the overwhelming joy of reunion in heaven is where hope is born. It is the bridge that leads from pain to peace, from longing to fulfillment, from separation to eternal, glorious connection. A journey of wrestling in the crucible of doubt and faith. What I'm about to share is perhaps the most vulnerable part of this entire journey for me. It is the moment when I, the receiver of this beautiful revelation, had to wrestle deeply with questions that I am certain many of you have felt burning in your own hearts. These are the raw, honest questions about love, loss, and the eternal journey of the soul. After receiving the profound revelation about soulmate reunions in heaven, I did not immediately find myself in a place of perfect peace. Instead, I found myself in a place of both awe and deep confusion, grappling with the immense tension between the glorious hope of reunion and the gut-wrenching heartbreak of separation. You see, it is one thing to hear about the overwhelming joy that awaits us in the future. It is quite another to live with the searing pain of earthly partings in the here and now. I am talking about those moments when you feel the ache of absence so keenly, so physically, that your spirit cries out for an explanation, for some understanding that can soothe the wound. I have stood alongside families as they mourned their lost loved ones at gravesides. I have seen the silent tears of those who have been separated by death or distance, and I have felt the crushing weight of their questions pressing down upon my own soul. Why? Why does a love so clearly designed by God have to be so painfully interrupted? Why must soulmates endure such profound and often prolonged separation? And how, in the face of such devastating loss, can love truly survive when it seems so utterly broken? These questions haunted me. They followed me from my prayer room into my daily life. I remember sitting quietly, wrestling with the stark reality that even the most beautiful love stories on earth are often tragically marked by loss and longing. I thought about the countless people who carry the invisible but heavy burden of these separations every single day, feeling abandoned, confused, or perhaps even angry at a God who seems silent. Their grief is raw and real, and their questions echo in the vast, lonely silence of their hearts. In those moments of wrestling, I felt a deep internal turmoil. It was as if the beautiful promise of reunion in heaven, while a source of ultimate hope, also served to highlight the stark, painful contrast of the agony we are asked to endure here on earth. How do we reconcile these two realities? How do we hold on to the hope of a perfect love restored while living with the daily reality of broken relationships and unfinished stories? How can we possibly hold on to faith when the ache of separation feels so constant and so unbearable? It was in this place of intense wrestling, this crucible of faith and doubt, that I poured out my heart in prayer. I was desperate for understanding. I asked Jesus to meet me not just in the vision, but in my confusion. I asked him to reveal not only the future joy of reunion, but also the present meaning behind the pain and the longing. I needed him to help me grasp how love could be powerful enough to transcend death, yet seem so fragile that it shatters in the here and now. And then, in a moment of profound spiritual clarity and grace, Jesus came near. He did not offer me simple, easy answers. He did not wave a hand and remove the pain of the questions. Instead, he met me in the questions. He sat with me in my wrestling. He showed me that the grief of separation is itself a sacred, integral part of the soul's journey. It is a refining fire, one that shapes us, purifies us, and prepares us for the unimaginable glory of the reunion to come. He gently reminded me that God's ways are often far beyond our limited human understanding, and that the pain we endure is not a sign of his abandonment, but rather the very space where our faith is born, tested, and ultimately strengthened. Jesus revealed to me that the spiritual journey of love is like a river flowing through vastly different terrains. Sometimes its waters are calm and joyful, flowing through sunlit meadows. At other times, the river becomes a turbulent, raging torrent, crashing against painful, jagged rocks. Each phase of this journey serves a divine purpose in the soul's growth and development. The moments of separation, as agonizingly difficult as they are also moments of deep and accelerated spiritual formation. They invite us, even force us, to trust beyond what our eyes can see, to cling to hope when all seems lost, and to grow in a love that is not dependent on physical presence or favorable circumstances, but is anchored in the unshakable, eternal promise of God. He also showed me that the pain of separation often leads to a deeper, more profound appreciation of love's true nature. When soulmates are apart, their love is tested, stretched, and purified. It is forced to transcend physical presence and earthly limitations, evolving into something far more profound, a spiritual bond that not only endures through trials but is strengthened by them, preparing both souls for the overwhelming, explosive joy of their final reunion. This understanding completely transformed the way I viewed grief and loss. Instead of seeing separation as a final, tragic rupture, I began to see it as a sacred pilgrimage. It is a journey that, while undeniably painful, is intricately woven into the very fabric of God's redemptive plan for our lives. It is a journey that calls us to hold on to our faith even when our hearts are breaking, and to trust that every tear we shed has eternal significance in God's eyes. In this revelation, I also came to realize the profound importance of vulnerability. Admitting that we do not have all the answers, that we struggle with doubt and are racked with pain, is not a sign of weak faith. It is, in fact, a courageous step toward true healing. Jesus meets us in our brokenness, not with condemnation, but with infinite compassion. He invites us to bring our questions, our fears, our anger, and our sorrows directly to him, knowing that he is the ultimate source of all comfort and all hope. As I began to share this part of my experience with others, I found that expressing this internal wrestling resonated deeply. So many people feel completely alone in their grief, burdened by heavy questions they dare not voice for fear of being judged. But when we create a space to acknowledge our doubts and our pains honestly, we create an opening for God's grace to work more profoundly within us and among us. We open ourselves to the possibility that even in our deepest confusion, love is still at work transforming, healing, and preparing us for the reunion that awaits. This revelation also challenges us to hold on to hope with a fierce honesty. This is not a blind hope that ignores pain, but a courageous hope that looks pain directly in the eye and embraces it, trusting that God is weaving all things, even the painful things, together for our ultimate good. It means learning to live with the profound tension of grief and joy, of loss and anticipation, knowing with certainty that our story is far from over. As I continue to reflect on this, I am constantly reminded that the journey of love is a mirror of our spiritual walk with God. Just as faith often requires us to trust in unseen promises, so too does love call us to believe in the reality of a reunion that lies beyond our present pain. This journey is not easy, but it is holy. It is a sacred invitation to lean into God's presence, to seek His peace in the midst of our sorrow, and to hold on to the promise that no separation is final in His kingdom. So, if you find yourself wrestling with these same questions, if your heart is heavy with the pain of lost love or the constant ache of distance, I want you to know with all certainty that you are not alone. Your doubts and your grief are part of a sacred process. Jesus meets you there, right in the midst of your struggle, ready to carry your burdens and fill your heart with a hope that is stronger than death. This is the mystery we are called to live with. A love that is both fragile and eternal, a pain that is both real and transformative, and a promise that is both beyond our understanding and yet intimately close to our hearts. It is a journey that invites us to trust, to hope, and to open our hearts to the fullness of God's incomprehensible love. As I continue to share what Jesus revealed, I pray that this honesty about the struggle will bring you comfort. It is okay to wrestle. It is okay to question. It is okay to long. These are the marks of a soul that is actively seeking God's truth. And in that seeking, you are never alone. We walk this path together, held by a love that will one day reunite all soulmates in a joy so overwhelming, it will bring tears not of sorrow, but of divine, glorious celebration. Hold on to this truth and let it carry you through the moments of doubt and pain. The journey is hard, but the destination is glorious, and Jesus is with us every single step of the way. The sacred encounter. What heaven's reunion truly is. What I am about to share now is the very heart of the revelation itself, the profound, sacred spiritual encounter where Jesus revealed to me the stunning reality of what truly happens in the moment soulmates reunite in heaven. This moment was unlike any other I have experienced. It was a holy unveiling, a divine drawing back of the curtain that transformed my understanding of love, loss, and eternal connection forever. After wrestling with my questions and longing for a deeper insight, I found myself again in prayer, seeking God's presence with a completely open and surrendered heart. It was then that Jesus appeared to me not as a distant historical figure, but with a closeness, an intimacy, and a tenderness that pierced through every layer of my doubt and fear. His presence was overwhelming in its holiness, yet infinitely gentle, inviting me into a truth so profound that it moved me far beyond the realm of words. Jesus began to explain the precise nature of soulmate reunions in heaven. He revealed that the encounter is not a quiet, composed, or reserved meeting, but an explosive flood of overwhelming emotion. He said that when soulmates finally see each other again after their earthly separation, the recognition is instantaneous and absolute. It is an instant unveiling of every shared memory, every unspoken longing, every inside joke, every secret tear, and every soul-deep connection that was forged between them before time even began. But what follows this moment of perfect recognition is what truly, completely astounded me. A sobbing. An uncontrollable, deep, soul-shaking sobbing that is unlike anything ever experienced on earth. Jesus was clear. This sobbing is not born from sadness, regret, or residual grief. It is born from the sheer, uncontainable intensity of divine joy. It is a holy release, a sacred torrent of tears that pour out as the reunited souls completely overflow with the fullness of God's perfect love and instantaneous healing. Jesus described this sobbing as a sacred act, a spiritual outpouring that cleanses and restores the soul to its original perfect state. These tears are the very language of heaven, a divine melody of redeemed love that washes away every scar of pain, every shadow of regret, and every single moment of loneliness that was carried through their earthly separation. It is the ultimate expression of the soul's profound relief and ecstatic delight in finally being reunited, and at last being made perfectly whole. As he spoke these words to me, I could almost feel the depth of this moment. This is no mere reunion. It is a divine restoration. It is a healing so complete and so powerful that it breaks every chain of earthly sorrow forever. The sobbing is the soul's uncontrollable, involuntary response to the tidal wave of grace that floods it. It is a physical sign that the deep wounds of separation are not just being bandaged, but are being miraculously transformed into a joy that is beyond all measure. Jesus also revealed that this reunion is a moment of extraordinary, unimaginable intimacy. It is as if every barrier that ever existed between the two souls, barriers of pride, fear, misunderstanding, and even the physical barrier of the body itself, completely dissolves. And what remains is pure, unfiltered, unshakable love. The soulmates do not merely see each other, they know each other in their absolute entirety. Every joy, every pain, every struggle, and every triumph is known and understood in an instant. This perfect knowledge deepens their connection far beyond anything that is possible in our limited earthly relationships. I was struck by the powerful truth that this sobbing is not a sign of weakness, but a holy and glorious expression of the soul's deepest joy. It is the soul's only possible way of communicating the overwhelming nature of divine love finally made tangible and real. In this sacred moment, all the tears that were shed in sorrow on earth are finally met, redeemed, and transformed by tears of healing and pure celebration. Jesus invited me to understand that this sobbing is also a powerful testimony to God's redemptive power. It is a declaration of the victory of love over separation, the triumph of grace over pain. It serves as a living witness to the eternal, unbreakable bond that God creates between souls, a living proof that His love sustains us through every trial and, in the end, brings us into a state of perfect, glorious unity. This single revelation reshaped my entire view of loss and reunion. I realized that the sobbing of reunion in heaven is the divine culmination of all earthly longing. It is the final, glorious transformation of grief into joy. It is a sacred moment that celebrates not only the reunion itself, but also the journey that led to it. The faith that was kept, the hope that was nurtured, and the endurance that was shown. As I contemplated this, I was deeply moved by the implications for all of us. This sobbing is a divine reminder that love truly does transcend death, that the separation we experience is only temporary, and that our reunion will be marked not by quiet ease, but by an overwhelming, joyous celebration. It is the moment when all the emotional weight we carried through our separation is finally and forever released, replaced by the fullness of a joy we cannot yet comprehend. Jesus also showed me that this image of sobbing is a precious gift to those of us who are left behind. It is a glimpse into the power of hope and the reality of reunion that can sustain the grieving heart through its darkest hours. Knowing that such a profound and joyful reunion awaits can transform how we grieve, giving us a new lens through which to view our loss, not as a final end, but as a sacred pause before a glorious reunion. I was humbled to receive this revelation, and I understood immediately that it was a message of hope and comfort meant for everyone who has ever experienced the pain of separation from a soulmate. It is a divine invitation to hold on to faith, to trust in God's promises, and to anticipate a reunion that will overflow with a joy so intense it can only be expressed through holy tears. As I share this with you, I want you to feel the weight and the wonder of this truth in your own spirit. When soulmates meet again in heaven, their souls recognize each other instantly, and the resulting flood of love and healing brings forth an uncontrollable sobbing not from sorrow, but from the sheer depth of joy and restoration. It is a sacred moment that testifies to the power of God's love to redeem, restore, and reunite. This understanding invites us to shift how we perceive our own earthly separations and grief. Instead of seeing loss as final or abandonment as real, we can begin to see the journey of love as one that is continuing, growing, and culminating in a reunion that is beyond all our hopes. The sobbing of reunion is the sound of love perfected and souls restored. It is a divine celebration of a connection made eternally whole. I will continue to share more of what Jesus revealed, but for now, hold this sacred image in your heart and mind. The sobbing of soulmates reunited in heaven, a holy outpouring of joy that transforms every tear shed apart into a rushing river of healing and love. This is the promise that sustains us. This is the hope that carries us through, and this is the truth that will one day bring us all into that eternal embrace.